was when the Prophet ﷺ during the Fatih Makkah. So when they got to Makkah and they had conquered Makkah in the 8th year after Hijrah, the keys of the Kaaba, which is a powerful political and economic tool at the time, still now, not just then, the keys of the Kaaba were with the Banu Shayba. So when the Prophet came into Makkah, the first thing Abbas told him, Abbas is uncle. You know, when we say Abbas is the uncle of the Prophet, we always think that the age gap between them is huge. It was the Prophet's uncle in truth, but they were just a few years apart. So he said, so Abbas now went in that we cannot leave this key with the Banu Shayba. You know, they've just accepted Islam right now. Collect the keys and give me. Let me be the one to keep the keys of that place. And the Prophet, like any human being, thought about it and felt, okay, that makes sense. I mean, Abbas had been a Muslim much longer than them. He's also family. Maybe it's better for him to hold the key. But Allah revealed the verse immediately, asking him not to do that. And so he returned the keys back to the Banu Shayba. And then he made a statement, the Prophet, after he returned the keys back to the Banu Shayba. And Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah, in one small book he wrote about business ethics, he said, this statement that the Prophet made is proof that every time the Prophet is about to err and Allah corrects him, he corrects him with something that is more noble than the error he would have committed. So the Prophet said, he who is invested with any affair of the Muslims and delegates a part of this affair to a man, while at the same time he knows of a better man for this affair, that is, there's someone else who can do the job better, yet he gives it to someone who is not as good. Then he said, then he's a traitor in the eyes of Allah and of his messenger. In Al-Hakim's book, the Usrah, he records this as saying, he who invests a man with an office in a community, while he knows in this same community a better man for this office, he's a cheater of Allah, of his messenger, and of the Muslims. So look at how we do things today and put it side by side with this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And I'm not even talking about our policies. Let's leave that aside. Let's look at how we do the one of business itself. You know, what is common is that a man sets up a business, and then after a while, his son just finishes from university, and then the son comes straight and becomes the MD or the CEO. Meanwhile, there are people who have been working with this man for years, who are actually the ones that actually know the business. But he feels, no, the best reward I can give my son is to bring them. And we find examples in people who are not even Muslims who do this kind of thing. Now, this thing I've just mentioned, you might think, oh, it's just for us to fill space. No, but it's critical. For many of us that are here, when we are growing up, in the land of the Southwest, I don't know of any other place, but Southwest, the wealthiest people in those communities were Muslims. And what were they doing? They were traders, businessmen. So when you get to the heart of any community in the Southwest, the market there will be dominated by Muslims, good businessmen. But what then happened? Their children went to secondary school. They didn't go there to learn business, but they went there to learn the 3 hours. They went there to learn the 3 hours, reading, writing, and what's the third one? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Okay. So they went there to learn the 3 hours. And then, like my brother said, physics and chemistry. And so when they come back from school and they finish their school start, their fathers will now appoint them to continue to run the business. What is the experience? So what do you find? Those businesses did not carry over. And they could not respond to the changing times. And today, the very shops that the Muslims were commanding in those same Southwest towns are occupied by who these days? Allah understand. The fourth hadith that I want to cite is one that is more common. The hadith is in Sahih Muslim, it's also in Sahih Bukhari. It's a more common one. And this was when the Prophet ﷺ appointed Ibn Taymiyyah a zakat collector. And in fairness, Ibn Taymiyyah was a very good person. He went, he collected the zakat, and then he came back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he told the Prophet, the zakat that he asked him to collect, this is what I've collected. But you see, when I was collecting the zakat, people gave me gifts. These are my own gifts. You know, if you have done something different, if he was a bad person, he could have gone to his house first and put the one they gave him there in the house. Okay? He could have done that. And then now, go to the Prophet and then give to the Prophet, okay, this is zakat that I said you asked me to collect. And nobody would have known anything better. But he actually took both to the Rasul sallallahu and said, this one is the zakat you asked me to collect. But this other one are the things that I was given when I was collecting the zakat. And the Prophet's emotion and anger was visible on his face. Immediately, he asked one of the companions to call as-salatu jamia. That's the cry when you want people to congregate. So people congregated immediately, and then he mounted the mimbar. And then he started talking about what Ibn Taymiyyah did, without mentioning Ibn Taymiyyah's name. So he now said, some of you, I employ you to go and collect zakat, and then you come back and you tell me, this one is for you, this one is the zakat you asked me to collect. If you are sitting in your father's house, will those things have come to you? If you are sitting in your father's house, will those things have come to you? Now, these are basically, what does this tell us? That the human being is probably not capable of knowing what is right and what is wrong, except what Allah tells you. Because as far as Ibn Taymiyyah is concerned, really, did he do anything wrong? I mean, if you want to be truthful, in your mind, did he do anything wrong? I remember this incident. Every time I read this, I did something opportunity that happened when I was a student in Ife. I won't mention the name of the people now because one of the people affected is the professor of law now. I don't know the other one. I don't know what has happened to the other one. Who was president? This one that is professor of law is now, he was the secretary general. They came to Lagos to come and collect money for Student Union Week. And so they went to somewhere and they were given refrigerators. The two of them were given refrigerators and some other gifts like that. And so they came to school and they pocketed the refrigerators. Apparently they were supposed to go with the speaker of the SRC. And that one didn't make the trip. So he was not telling them, okay, where is my own refrigerator? They said, you didn't go now. So he let out the and said, no, they collected refrigerator, that refrigerator. And it became a long talk as to should they keep the refrigerator or is it something that belongs to the school? Of course they kept it at the end of the day. If they were Muslims or we knew what Islam demanded of us at the time, they would have known that that refrigerator did not belong to them. It's something that shall be turned over to the state. When I started working, I was in private house. I used to audit Chevron, and the audit would take place around December. You know, the people will bring lots of hampers to Chevron at the time. Who do you think will be taking most of the hampers? I don't know. You? Directors? No. Who? The auditors. The auditors? No. Why would they give auditors? The people who bring the hampers are not, they don't know the auditors now. People in their payable section, they are the ones that hand out the checks. They are the ones that are collecting most of the hampers. Because the contractors who are giving the hampers, at the end of the day, knows the person who gives in the check. So when you go to the payable section and you see the hampers there, it's like sky high. Meanwhile, you go to somewhere like engineering, where the service was actually required. I probably find one bag or two just in the chief's office. I don't know what happened. The next year, Chevron just came up with one policy. No hamper in the office anymore. Anybody that brings hamper should drop it at the gates. And all the contents of the hamper will be sold and the money donated to motherless babies home. By that second year, maybe there were 5 hampers at the gates. So you will know that the people who are giving those hampers, They were giving it to make sure that they drive them. It wasn't a gift. Because, yes, it was an inducement. Because if it was a gift, there was no reason why they would not still leave it at the gate. So I'm sure what must have been happening was that, okay, you want to at the gate, no problem. Just give me your home address, I will drop the hamper at your house. And the same objective will still have been achieved. So we can see from these stories that we cannot say that we can be ethical unless we are guided by the precepts of the faith. There are 6 things in Islam upon which our Islamic ethics are based. The first is Tawheed. If you recognize that only Allah must be worshipped, and all worship must be devoted to Him, that in itself frees you to live well in this world. It frees you to live very well in this world. Because what it means is that whatever is going to come to you cannot be stopped by any other person. So there is no need for you to be unethical in your dealings with people. Second one is Alhaji, equilibrium or justice. We demand justice when we relate to people. So the least that we can do is to also give them justice. Because when you are just, that's the only way you can say, oh, I also demand justice from you. The third is free will. Al-Iqtiyar. That's the third one, free will. Now, Allah has given us the free will to act as human beings. So you cannot say that I'm coerced to do that which is evil. You cannot say that I'm coerced to do that which is evil. Because you have the free will to do that which is right. And this free will is important for us to recognize when we are looking at making choices, making decisions. The responsibility. We are responsible for our actions, so we should take that responsibility and act right. Ihsan, benevolence. Now this is a concept that non-Muslims will never ever understand. At one level, Ihsan means worshiping Allah as if you see Him. Even though you do not see Him, He sees you. That's one level of Ihsan. Another level of Ihsan is to be generous to people. So generous to them that you are giving them what they do not deserve. You are giving them what they do not deserve. And this is the part that the non-Muslims will never ever understand. So these are the things that form our basis for Islamic ethics. So when a Muslim imbibes these things, then it will be easy for him to have good ethical conduct. Now, let's talk a bit about, I'm going to talk about the kind of ethical traits we must have in business. But let's talk about business itself first, before we end up with that. The first, what is the base ruling of business transactions? Is it permissible for us to do business? Or is it not permissible? And don't tell me that, what kind of person is that? Because a Muslim should ask that question of every act first. Is this act permissible or is it not permissible? Part of the errors that we make as an ummah is that we do things first before we start asking, is this thing permissible? Business is permissible. Allah says so in the Quran. In Surah Al-Baqarah, it says, I have permitted trading and I have forbidden riba. So that statement in itself means riba is not business. But Allah has permitted trading. And then he also enjoins us in Surah An-Nisa that when we deal with ourselves, we should do so by mutual consent. So what we call trade in Islam, what is called trade is willful giving and willful taking in one transaction. Willful giving and willful taking. That's what's called for a consideration and not for a loan. That is what is called trade in Islam. And there are so many verses, there are so many hadith of the Rasul where he also talks about business. He says in one, business transactions are done upon mutual agreement, which means both of you must agree. for you to have business. And then there's another where the Prophet said in Ahmad, he said, when you sell something, weigh it. And when you buy something, have it weighed. Now, the text of that hadith is an amr, is a command. But do you know how many times we disobey that command? When you buy meat, for instance, and you buy it from Najib, who is selling it on the road, do you get it weighed? So that's why you buy it at different prices. And then sometimes you get it right, and another times you won't get it right. So that's the ruling about business. When do we say we have a business agreement? Because one of the things I'm supposed to talk about is what do we call agreement or legal agreement in Islam? When do we say that we have a business agreement? Every agreement in Islam must fulfill 10 conditions. Yes, must fulfill 10 conditions. Every agreement must fulfill 10 conditions. Some of those conditions are very apparent. So it's not like you have to keep 10 things in your head. The first is there must be mutual agreement. Because it's an agreement, right? Between A and B. So A must be willing and B must be willing for you to have an agreement. Once you have coercion, then that is no longer an agreement. Except where the coercion is legally justified. When do we have a legally justified coercion? For instance, the court says, this man is a debtor, he's owing so many people. Sell his property so that you can pay the people he's owing. You know, you won't like his property to be sold. So we still take that as agreement because it's the law that says that. Okay? Second, both participants are allowed to engage in transaction. There are 5 conditions that must be met for people to engage in transactions. One is sanity. So a madman cannot engage in a transaction. It will not be valid. So if a madman comes and says, sell water to me, and then you give him water, and the guy runs away, he does not give you money. He's not owing you anything. Because the first condition of sanity is not fulfilled. Second is maturity. What do you mean by maturity? Meaning the person has reached the age of bulugh. That's what the Quran says, instructing the son and some other verses, that when a child has not reached the age of puberty and he has wealth, you should appoint someone as a guardian over that wealth. Not so that the person can spend the wealth anyhow, but you can guide that child. So that's number 2. Number 3, the third condition in this being allowed to participate in it is ability. You must be able to give that thing. What you want to sell, you must be able to give it. So for instance, if someone says, keep this phone for me, you now turn around and say, I want to sell the phone to you. You don't have ability to be able to give that phone because it is not your own. So those conditions must be met for both participants before we can say yes, you can engage in the transaction. Number 3 is ownership of the property being traded. You must own the property. Now, this one is very important. For those who are brokers, for instance, does that mean that they cannot do brokerage? Meaning, A has the property, B wants to buy, and then you now come in and you say, yes, I can make this transaction happen. As a broker, no problem. You are not claiming that you are the owner of that property. So, no problem as the owner. But what is important is, if you want to sell something, that's A himself who claims that he has a property, the property must be his. If it's not his, he can't sell it. You cannot sell what you don't have. Okay, so then number 4, permissibility of the goods, very important. You can only sell in Islam what is permissible. Now there are 3 categories of this. There are things that are outrightly impermissible to sell. Alcohol, prostitution, gambling, usury, things like that. Outrightly impermissible. Then there are some things that are derived in permissibility. The Prophet ﷺ said, when Allah has made something impermissible haram, trading in it is also haram. Trading in it is also haram. So you can't say that, oh, okay, I cannot sell pork because pork is not permissible. But if I turn the pork into fat, oil, I can sell the oil because that is not pork. That is still impermissible. And it's from something that is not permissible is still not permissible. Number 5 is dispensability. That is, are you free to be able to sell it? Number 6, absence of anonymity. It must not be anonymous. It must be known. The quantity must be known. Okay? What do I mean by that? Someone has a fish pond, and then he now comes and says, I will sell to you 5 kilograms of fish from this pond. Okay? Is that correct? Can you do that? I will sell to you 5 kilograms of fish from this pond. Is that correct?
It's not correct. Because it's not sure.
It's not sure what?
It's not sure that I can take 5 kilograms of that pond.
No, you can now. You can. I mean, there are lots of fishes inside the pond. That is correct. Because they have said, I will sell to you 5 kilograms. That's specific. There is a weight that is specific. And the fish is there in the pond, you probably will now get to the state of being sold maybe in a few days. So that's not the problem. But let's say that you have a house, okay? And that house has a large park that birds stay. You now say to him, I will say to you the first 15 birds that perch on that tree. Is that correct? Is that correct? No, that's not correct. Because you do not have, that is not known. That one is not known. So, for instance, let's apply it to what is current now. There's something in Islam that is called Bayu Salam. I have a date farm. The dates fruits are on it. They are almost ripe. Because the Prophet said, don't sell fruits on a tree unless they are almost ripe. So in other words, Allah can still make them rotten, but at least you are fairly sure that the thing will still become good fruit. Not that it's just starting. So on the day that I will say to you, I want to sell to you 20 kilograms of dates from this tree. And it will be ready in X number of days. So that's when you should come back and come and take it. Whether I collect the money now or I collect the money later, it does not matter. Once you can both agree, that's a valid transaction. That's what's called Bayu Salam. But if I now say to him, you know I have a date farm, he has not seen it, or maybe he has even seen it, but the fruits are just, the flowers are just coming out of the farm. Now says, I can sell to you, no fruits yet, oh. And I say, I can sell to you 20 kilograms of this whenever the fruits come out. That is not a valid transaction because there's an unknown in that particular case. Which brings me to transactions that are called derivatives in today's world. There are 4 types of those transactions. There's one that is called a forward. There's another one that is called a future. There is option and there is swap. Now, almost unanimously, option and swap are not permissible because there's a lot of uncertainty about them. But forward and futures, this is where you have a lot of the scholars disagree with themselves. Some say you can do forward, some say you can do futures. Some say no, you can do both of them. All appears to me to be the one that puts the heart at rest, and Allah knows best, is that forward transactions are permissible. But once you start moving to futures, options, and swap, then those ones will not. In fact, those who say you can do them, the conditions they attach to it for it to become permissible are so many and so complicated that it's not something that an ordinary trader can just have in his head. And since we can trade in other ways instead of those complicated manners, it's better for us to just stick to what people can know. And so that will be that you can do regular spot transaction, you can do forward, but don't start venturing into the others. Forward transactions and Bayu Salam are strikingly similar. So that will be something that can be done. Number 7 is the trade conditions. You cannot put a condition on an agreement, on a trade agreement, that cannot be fulfilled. So someone says, for instance, sell this thing to me, and I will pay you when there's an eclipse of the moon. It doesn't seem matter when it's going to be. Do you know, for instance, that do you have control over the eclipse? So you have made the condition of payment, you have made it uncertain. So the trade conditions must be certain. Then number 8 is forbiddance of zulm. Now under this forbiddance of zulm means oppression. There are too many things under it. Cheating, for instance. You can't cheat the other party. You cannot underweigh, nor should you overweigh at the same time. Then you are not supposed to sell inferior goods, and so on and so forth. That's part of what is called the forbiddance of zulm. Then number 9, and this is the one that many of us find ourselves in one way or the other in. No riba. That's number 9. There must be no riba in the transaction. Now, let me just cut straight, because I'm sure that several of us know what riba means. Let me just cut straight and say, is the interest that you pay on a loan in a bank, does it qualify as riba? The clear answer to this question is that yes, it does. Now, why it's not so clear in Nigeria is that it is reported that Sheikh Gumi passed a fatwa that says the interest that is paid on loans in the bank in Nigeria here is not the riba that is talked about in Islam. That the riba that is talked about in Islam has nothing to do with money. That it has to do with ziyada, an increase in something, or it has to do with the exchange of goods. True, but money is also a good in that context. So that fatwa, if it's true that Sheikh Gumi passed that fatwa, then it is wrong. Everybody is entitled to his being wrong now and then. So it's not infallible. So then it is wrong. So that interest is actually riba. And Allah has found so much upon riba that really a Muslim, for his own sake, should distance himself away from it. But what is more important is the cooperation that you're supposed to have with the people who are enmeshed in riba. What kind of cooperation can you have with such people? So I'm a printer, for instance, and a bank comes to me and says, can you print my materials? Can I do that? Is that permissible for me to do or not? I'm a software engineer. The bank says, come and do my software so I can run a better business. Can I do that? And so on and so forth. These are the ones that are more critical for us to answer than the one of whether that money is riba or not. That money is riba. That one is not an issue. And this is the one that you have a lot of gray areas in. You have a lot of gray areas in. But what seems to be accurate, and Allah knows best, is that a lot of the scholars who say you can't associate with the people of riba say so not from the point of view that you are earning riba, but because you are helping the people of riba. And you know the verse I said every one of us should remember, that we should help each other in righteousness and not help each other in sin. And but the scholars are also agreed that if someone earns riba and then gives you that money and says, look, you want money, okay, here, take. It's okay for you to take the money. It is halal for him, but it is halal for you. The scholars are in agreement about that it's okay for you to take the money. So, and then that brings the dispute. So, why is it not okay for me, for instance, to do that? For instance, if you look at Usrah verse 100, the verse of Harut and Marut, the angels were teaching the people of Babylon magic, they told them something. This thing is harmful. It is what people use to be able to separate husband and wife and so on and so forth. And so we are free of you as we are teaching you. We are not asking you to go and use it. You understand? So some of the people say that if you are rendering a service that is itself not riba, to a person who may use that to riba ends, for instance, then it is important for you to give these caveats. I say, don't use this thing for riba. Others say, no, don't even go near it at all. How possible it is for you not to go near it in today's world is a challenge that each and every one of us will have to face. Because even when you are sitting in your company, and you say you are working in a company, not in a bank, the money that they are using to pay you salary is actually a bank loan on which the company is paying. Then the last one is no gambling. No gambling. Now this no gambling one brings me to a question that people always ask. Insurance, is it permissible or not? No, it is not. It's not permissible. It's not permissible because it has elements of gambling in it. It has elements of Mesel, it has elements of Dera, both of it in it. So insurance is not permissible. And fortunately, you can't say there is no alternative in today's economy now. There are companies that are now takaful companies that provide insurance and some kind of them. Even if they do also have some problems of their own, at least you are still one way away from that which is not permissible. But it's not the insurance one really that I want to talk about whether this gambling one. It is the one that has caused so much rancor amongst Muslims that is called network marketing. That monthly level marketing scheme thing, that GNLD, Forever Living, TiVo, all those things that are not useful to the body, that must be sold by somewhere or the other. Because the truth is, if they're actually useful to the body, doctors will be recommending them. There will be no need to do multi-level marketing about them at all. Now, let's be very clear. If it was marketing, if it was just to sell, then there's no need to do multi-level marketing about it now. If it's a good that offers usefulness, people will buy it. So why should my ego